Bless you. This is the Reverend Dr. Gilberto Rosado. Dios lo bendiga. Este es Reverendo Dr. Gilberto Rosado. Welcoming you to another broadcast. At this hour, we have our bilingual broadcast, our teaching in English and Spanish. So we ask that you be patient as we translate live on the fly between languages. Esta es la hora que damos la enseñanza en inglés y español y pedimos que tengas pues paciencia mientras que traduzcamos de un idioma al otro. Aproveche y aprende el otro idioma. While we're at it, you can learn the other language as well. Es un beneficio de sintonizarse con nuestro ministerio. It's a benefit, an added benefit, I should add, of tuning in to our ministry. God bless you and welcome to our program today. Dios lo bendiga y bienvenido a nuestro programa de hoy. I think I'm working on a sneeze right now. Excuse me. Bienvenidos, perdón. It's just not one thing, it's something else. All right. All right, let's get into it. Dios te bendiga a todos. Vamos a entrar. Estamos metidos en este bochinche. Oye, qué bochinche. ¡Qué bochinche! What's the gossip? We're in this gossip here. Ooh, about, what did Israel understand? What is it? Why is it? And we can go very simply. Let's do some of the other analysis. In other words, it had nothing to do with Egypt. We're continuing from the last lesson. Estamos continuando de la lección previa. En el serie, ¿qué es el significado o la definición de santo actualmente o realmente? Y en este análisis hemos llegado a la consagración de Aarón y sus hijos al oficio de sacerdocio y los ritos que Dios exigió o instruyó que se hiciese usando animales, ¿va? Que coincidentemente eran dioses de en Egipcio, y Israel estuvo en Egipto por 300 años, ya, o sea, generaciones, 300 años, que la cultura alrededor de ellos, aunque ellos estaban separados, pero todavía trabajaban, eran esclavos. En un tiempo dado a otro se formaron la esclavitud. Egipto lo tomó como esclavos, personas en sus hogares, los nobles, los ricos de Egipto, y como también nacionalmente Egipto para construir sus pirámides y templos que utilizaron este gran pueblo Israel en sus medios. Y la conversación, tienen que entender que en la cultura egipcia, todo el mundo está hablando de cierta forma, usando terminología asociado con esos dioses, porque también hablaban y usaban términos que afiliaban o que traía adoración en el día tras día para el egipcio por sus dioses. Eso tienen que entender, como la gente hace hoy día. Ay, virgen, y dicen cosas como, oh Jesús, oh Dios, eso es a Dios. Te veo después, adiós. ¿Ves? So, en la cultura tiene que haber cositas, costumbres, dichos, fraseología, frases y otros, ¿cómo se dice? Otros, frases, otros modos y ¿cómo se dice? Sayings, cosas que la gente dice, historia, maneras de expresarse, fundadas en la adoración a estos dioses en Egipto. So we have to, what I said there in Spanish, sometimes I have to give the Spanish the time, is that you have to realize that for 300 years in Egypt, even though Israel was, in their own separate town, they still worked outside of their towns. They still worked for the Egyptians. They worked with rich people. They were servants in the homes of rich people in Egypt. And later on, or at the same time, it developed that the Pharaoh came, because pharaohs were always changing. And when the Pharaoh came that didn't know or respect Joseph, right, as the Bible says it, they didn't know Joseph, then they enslaved. Then Israel became enslaved because, hey, we need people to build temples. We got to get that welfare program up and put people to work. I'm bringing it into modern thinking, modern experiences, so you can relate to what's going on in Egypt for these 300 years. And you have to understand, it like we say good. The word good comes from the word God. These are words and sayings. Good. Someone sneezed. I was about to sneeze, and what would have you said? You would have said, God bless you. I think even atheists say that. I'm just saying. Some of them they have, oh, God bless you. And they don't believe in God, right? But it's a saying. It's my point that these are sayings that people say. Oh, Jesus, you should have seen that accident. They don't know Jesus. They're not worshiping Jesus, right? But it becomes a saying commonly used, in society, today's society, right? So we see examples, and there's many other things that people think, concepts, like I said, cultural sayings that are part of our culture. They're part of our culture. People adapt to these things because simply we're around it every day. And so it is absolutely credible to believe, to accept, to consider that Israel was knowledgeable of Egyptian theology. We call it mythology today, but it was their theology at the time. They would know that. We already established from the beginning of this teaching of the series where holy came from, Kodesh. Where did that come from? It was from the Semite. It was used in Egypt because Egypt had a funny history. And what the funny history is, that Egypt was ruled by different nationality of pharaohs. They weren't all Egyptian. Some of the pharaohs were Semitic, right? Now, Israel is descendant of the Semitic peoples. And so sometimes when the Semitic pharaohs were ruling Egypt, what would you expect? You would expect a lot of familiarity from the Semitic culture to
to be brought into Egypt, and for especially the Hebrews, they would connect to them. Oh yeah, I know. Oh yeah, the Pharaoh knows this because we're he's Semitic like we are, and a lot of the Semitic influence became a relatively permanent part of Egyptian culture, right? Because all of these things made great effect. We see the dichotomy, podemos ver la dicotomía, yo creo que se dice, que quiere decir el debate entre las influencias aún en lo religioso. We see this dichotomy even in the religious customs, and particularly in the religious battles for prominence of certain gods. You see, because you see that over time, different gods would rise in prominence or popularity, right? But I think all of that is really affected by the Pharaoh, who the Pharaoh is and where he comes from, right? So if the Pharaoh is Semitic, you're going to see that the Semitic Pharaoh raises up or begins to proselytize, which means to convert his nation now that he's ruling towards the gods that he favors and that he worships. And so this is how these gods came in. You had this type of god that was there from the Mesopotamians, which is the original or the ancient culture even to the Egyptian. And then you have the Semitic pharaohs that would come in and also bring in those gods or their gods, and they would be mixed in because the Pharaoh, whatever Pharaoh said, that's it, has to happen. And then as successive pharaohs came in, each one picked and chose. It's almost like the president of the United States. When a new president comes in, he picks his own cabinet, a new cabinet, right? So that means, make believe, imagine, if you will, apply that same sense to these new pharaoh. He's Semitic, so he's going to bring in some of his gods and favor them and promote them to his people. In other words, this God is what we're going to venerate more. We need to do this before he gets angry and blah, blah, blah. Whatever is the doctrinal or the evangelical flavor and leaning that they give their particular deity. Así que ellos, como el presidente de Estados Unidos, cuando es nuevo y entra el oficio de nuevo, o sea, elegido, recién elegido, él escoge su gabinete. Él establece lo que quiere. Y así mismo los faraones, entraron, el nuevo faraón, si era semético, si era de Egipto mismo, él traía sus preferencias y entonces mandaba que vamos a construir más templos a este Dios. No estamos dando importancia, ¿no? y le estamos ignorando, vamos a hacer temas. Entonces eso daba influencia en el pueblo de Egipto que adoptara también ahora este Dios, y a veces era para que adoraran ese Dios más que el previo, o sea que la que estaba antes pues ya se rebaja su rango y ahora estamos, porque el faraón es que adora ese faraón. Nosotros tenemos este faraón. So a lot of people would follow what the pharaoh would do and the way the pharaoh believed, and it's just the same practice that people have had for ages, for millennia, following its leaders, whatever, and especially if they're kings. they would follow what the king did. And if the king ate spinach, well, then everyone wanted to eat spinach because the king was doing that. Even in the Christian, history of the Christian church, when Constantine became emperor, of course, and he had a leaning towards the Christianity. Everybody that wasn't a Christian already started coming in, which is what caused a lot of the criticisms of the Roman Catholic Church today. Still today, they're impacted by that happening. But that's the whole point. That gives you the classic example, not too far back in ancient history, of the influence of a king, or in this case of Constantine, an emperor, bringing in a religion and a church and making it official. So those are the type of things. And what did he do? He built a temple, right? One of the things he did was build a Christian temple. Took that and made I believe it was the I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right or saying it right, the Holy Sophia. And that was the church that he built, and I believe also in Byzantine. I haven't taught church history in years. And was one of my first classes, if not the first class I taught in seminary. So, así que, it's been years ago. Así que tenemos que ver, and then we can see, obviously we have to admit the impact that this would have on people. And so we need to understand that with this influence of the Pharaoh on the land, we have the combative deities or preferred order of priority and preferences going back and forth and changing over time, and especially according to the emphasis that a pharaoh gave to it. And so let's take a look at the screen. Vamos a entrar en esta clase. We're right there where we were last week. Estamos donde estuvimos la semana pasada. Right now, what we're looking at, let me start, were we here? Right. We're looking at here at the ram god, what the ram represented. Estamos mirando al Dios que es representado en forma de cordero, all right? And so, es cordero, and déjame hacer otro, porque a veces se me olvida las palabras en español. Sometimes I'm forgetting the Spanish words for certain things, because I don't use them all the time. It's giving me all sorts of, they also use ram as a hitting, something that's hitting. That's what we're seeing here. We don't get the biblical, so for that reason we're going to go into Exodus 29. We're going to look at this in Spanish. Vamos a buscarlo en español aquí, que no me lo están dando. So we'll look at it at the Spanish. And okay, so they fixed that. Okay, and in Spanish, dice carnero. Carnero, all right? So it uses the word carnero for the ram. So los egipcios usaban o tenían el dios, uno de los dioses, en forma de carnero. So el carnero, right? The ram represents the powerful gods of sun. El carnero representa el poderoso Dios del sol. These are important things here, and the reason is not just the reason is that you have to understand and be careful. In other words, remember the associative symbology to these symbols. It's symbols that are tied to symbols that are tied to symbols. Aquí lo que estamos viendo es un complejo de símbolos asociado con símbolos que están basados en símbolos, right? Estamos viendo un complejo de símbolos. This is a complex symbology that we see that originates in Egypt. Okay? Complex, you know that Egypt was blossoming the polytheism. El politeísmo estaba desarrollando grandemente en Egipto. I keep messing that up. So, tenemos que entender que había era complejo la teología de Egipto, ¿ok? Pero había mucha relación con símbolos, especialmente cuando había preferencia de un dios asociado con el mismo símbolo que tenían por otro dios. Here with the ram, we see that the gods, and this happened frequently, that one symbol, one base symbol, or I mean base symbol, I mean like a foundational symbol, was attached to other gods. And then one god would have this symbol associated with him, but then also another god by another pharaoh, or another time, or maybe congruently at the same time, was also associated with the same symbol. Así que habían un par o más de dioses que eran simbolizadas y asociados con el mismo símbolo que tenía otro dios, right? Muchas veces, y eso era también una práctica que se hacía hasta los tiempos romanos y más. So this was a practice that was done all the way to the Roman period, actually, if not beyond, where the Romans would take Greek gods and join them or associate them with Roman versions. See that? Always the reasoning behind that was to show a Roman dominance. In other words, that Rome was in charge, and you have the same. That's the same thing. See, it's the same thing. But the god we call is Jupiter, and you had this other god that you would name whatever. You have it as that name, but it's the same god because it's the same symbol. So los romanos también imponían dioses y adoptaban dioses. No solamente imponían, also the Romans would adopt gods right? So it wasn't only that they imposed gods, Roman gods, but they would also adopt gods that were cultured, that were part of another culture that they conquered and wanted to assimilate, and they would bring it in to facilitate assimilation. Entonces ellos traían también los dioses que no tenían y lo injertaban en la cultura romana para que las naciones que se ya conquistadas o que se unían con los romanos podían entonces sentirse, pues, este es nuestro pueblo, esto es nuestro imperio, para que se uniesen mentalmente, right, a través de sus religiones. So this is the same thing these pharaohs would do in Egypt, and over time you had all of these gods mounting up. And also other things created gods. The lack of knowledge, as I was sharing with some atheists yesterday and still today. Estaba compartiendo con unos ateos ayer y hoy también que la falta de conocimiento también en esta época creaba la necesidad de crear dioses para rellenar la falta de conocimiento de la naturaleza, con mucho más y más descubrimiento, más y más entendimiento, pero había que poner un Dios porque no había otra explicación. Los dioses se formaron a base de la falta de entendimiento. So we see that also that these gods were formed out of the basis, from the basis or the foundation or the cause of a lack of knowledge. And so that was what created gods in the false gods in the first place. I mentioned two things just as a side note. It's a lack of knowledge interacting with or mixed with the created things. So we were in my posit. The created things and a lack of knowledge together forms the false God. Así que la falta de conocimiento es un punto que traje a los ateos. Es la falta de conocimiento mezclada con las cosas creadas, las cosas que Dios creó. Esas son la base de todo lo que es Dios falso. Okay, and to this point, a este punto, we have the sun, which was also Baal, right? Tenemos el sol que también era Baal, reconocido como el símbolo o la representación del dios Baal. Y entonces it was in fact a god, and that god was depicted in other ways. And here in Egypt, aquí en Egipto, el sol se ponía, como hemos visto en el Apis, the bull god. It was utilized between the horns, right? So that combination in the symbology. Entonces vemos que el simbolicismo del sol entre los cuernos del Apis, del becerro, como símbolos combinadas, ¿cierto? Y asociados. So again here, is this Baal? ¿Es este Baal? ¿Es el becerro aquí? Is this the bull? The Apis? Yet, the ram represents the powerful God of sun. ¿Sí? Aquí vemos entonces que el carnero es representa el sol y el aire, el sol. Entonces el becerro también tiene el sol como símbolo. Entonces Baal tiene el sol, ese sol, y se llama Baal en otras culturas, right? So again, the same symbols, el mismo símbolo asociado con varios dioses aquí, en el mismo nación, en el mismo cultura, here even in the same culture. We don't have to go to another nation, another area to find the sun depicted as whatever god. But here we see in within the same nation other gods having the symbol as well. And supposedly they are the god that's there. All right. So you get the idea. Why did this happen? Is because of the influences, and so we can see how this happens and why it even comes into Israel, because simply the understanding is that everyone's using the same symbols. El entendimiento, esto también entró en Israel, o sea que Israel conocía de esto porque, otras naciones y todo el mundo está usando los mismos símbolos. So it's easy. Es fácil de pensar que Israel, o sea que lo que sucedió en Israel no tenía nada que ver con Egipto en términos de los símbolos. So it's easy to come to a conclusion that the symbols used in Israel had nothing to do with Egypt, right? Because the symbols were used by other nations for different gods, and even in Egypt itself for different gods. So ese punto que los símbolos, que estaba bien usar los símbolos porque de todos modos cada nación lo usaba para sus propios dioses, y en Egipto mismo tenían varios dioses con el mismo símbolo. So podemos usar ese símbolo, o sea que Israel podía ser instruido a utilizar ciertos símbolos porque no necesariamente representaba lo de Egipto o lo de cualquier otra nación. Right. So it didn't necessarily, is the argument, represent the god of Egypt or the gods of the Philistine or any other nation or anything at any time. It could have been just simply a new instruction, and these symbols will be used accordingly to this new instruction. That's nice and pretty. It's cleanly packaged, but it just completely does not make sense in this scenario, in the scenario that we have, and that is that Israel was 300 years inculcated in Egyptian theology. Moses was educated in Egyptian theology. So it's not just the people were living amongst the Egyptians, but Moses was just educated by the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh, in the palace of Pharaoh. Okay, así que se puede decir eso, pero honestamente, ¿qué tú vas a esperar después de 300 años en Egipto? Y entonces Moisés, Moisés fue educado en el palacio de Faraón, en la casa de Faraón mismo. So it's not believable at all. It's more sense that God uses the symbols that Israel is already associated with. In other words, familiar with, not associated. That Israel was already familiar with. And this is what we see. All right, so again, let's continue looking through here. The ram represents the powerful god of sun and air, Amun-Re, with and in this picture there's a man standing here, right? It is a king, King Taharka, standing below. King Taharka was the third in the line of Kushite rulers whose power extended from their native Nubia, right? Again, they weren't from Egypt. This was a different king, right? A different national, a different, what do you call it? Not race necessarily, but a different peoples, right? From the northern Sudan. And his power extended from the northern Sudan, where he came from, to the whole of Egypt. So Egypt was taken over, which they ruled as pharaohs of the 25th dynasty. Así que este faraón que promovió esto, y, o sea que ¿cómo se dice eso? Enfatizó este Dios, el carnero, venía, su poder se extendía desde su nación original, que era Nubia. Era un nativo de Nubia en el Sudán Norte hacia todo Egipto, y reinaron como faraones en la dinastía 25. No me voy a entrar en todos esos detalles de egipcio porque no estamos estudiando en realidad Egipto, pero son buenas cosas para uno ver y investigar y tener un entendimiento de lo que está pasando. Now, let's see what it says here. The ram was associated with various gods from Egypt's earliest periods, even though sheep were considered not to be clean. So they did not consider sheep to be clean, right? Or pure by the ancient Egyptians. Así que los egipcios no consideraban la oveja como limpio, ¿sí? Pero entonces ellos adoptaron el Dios del carnero, y eso es interesante, que ellos adoptasen este símbolo, este animal, como un Dios, cuando ellos consideran que no estaba limpio. So you tell me, right? ¿Qué cosa contradictoria? So we have here like a contradiction in the opinions or in the considerations of Egyptians with this ram god. It could be, puede ser, que los faraones seméticos influenciaron mucho en la adopción del carnero, de esta oveja, imponiéndolo sobre la gente egipcia, que tenían la oveja como un animal impuro. Fíjese. So here you see a problem with Egyptian theology, a contradiction, if you will. So the atheists, if you guys are into contradiction, go after the Egyptians, because they have a contradicting theme here. But my simple analysis of this is simply that with all these Semitic pharaohs coming in to rule Egypt, and they wouldn't have found no problem with the ram being a god. There's no problem there. It's a god. So the pharaoh imposes the worship of this god and the recognition of this god, while the people consider the animal impure and unclean. You see? So again, there's like that little friction going on, but the pharaoh orders this, so we have to follow what pharaoh says, you know. So this is, and then over time it is accepted and becomes See, but the issue here is that over time it becomes a religious belief. That's the point. Over time it became a religious belief. And you see that there's error there, there's contradiction. Y usted ve que hay contradicción aún en esta creencia, que no tiene lógica, que el carnero siendo de la oveja se venera, pero las ovejas se consideran impuros. So this is the thing, doesn't make any sense, right? But yet, pero porque es religión, es creencia religiosa. But because it is the religious belief and the instruction from the priest, because the king wants it so, the pharaoh wants it so, it becomes inculcated and part of the culture of the Egyptians. So they inculcate error. They inculcate friction, contradiction into the culture and as a religious belief. Because it's okay, it's a religion. You just have to believe. You just have to have faith. Wow, this is deep stuff. God is a ram. Rams are impure, sheep are impure and unclean. This is deep. Oh, this is really deep. So, otra vez, este concepto de usando el carnero, oveja, entre este pueblo impuesto a la fuerza por orden de Faraón y inculturado, yo creo que se dice, o inculcada, que yo digo, que quiere decir que ya después del tiempo la gente se acostumbra y empiezan a adoptar la creencia, pero está en error, right? Si vamos a mirar, hay una contradicción allí, pero ¿qué sería la reacción? What would the reaction be for a typical Egyptian? You know, this is deep stuff. Estos son cosas profundas. ¿Cómo puede ser? Esos son misterios. Entonces el sacerdote que dirá, what would the priest say when one of the Egyptian church members asked them, hey priest, how is it that we have a God that's a sheep and then the sheep are unclean? And what would the priest say? ¿Y qué dirá el sacerdote cuando alguien le pregunta cómo tenemos un Dios de oveja cuando nosotros consideramos la oveja impuro? ¿Y qué dirá el sacerdote? I can tell you what he's going to say. Es un misterio. No se tenta a Dios con las preguntas. Es un misterio de Dios. So he would say that, hey, it's a mystery of God. You don't ask questions of God. See, because this is what people do. This is religious thinking, that you cannot question God, right? Because somehow you're tempting God, and that's a big no-no. Don't ask those type of questions. Just believe. You just have to have faith. Just believe what we tell you. Simple, because you have to believe what we're teaching you and accept it, or else you are the devil. You are part of that. You have been confused by the devil, and then that's it. See, it's what I've always been saying. It's mind control. Yo siempre he dicho que esto es control de la mente, que empiezan a decir, oh, tú no puedes cuestionar a Dios, esto es lo que dijo Dios, ya. Tú tienes que aceptarlo, si no, él está confundido por el diablo, por Satanás. Te ha confundido. No, God gave you a brain. You can think. Dios le dio un cerebro, usted puede pensar. Inquirir en su santo Dios. Inquire in his holy temple, for goodness sake. That's why he's holy. Por eso es santo. Amen. All right, but again, let's continue in this. It's alarming. This stuff is alarming. It's eye-opening. But you have to realize something very important here. Then we have this guy here. I'm going to say it's new. I'm just guessing. Probably they just said, it's cold. You don't know what you're doing. Okay. Either way. This was another Egyptian god who was typically depicted with the head of a ram. See? Este es un dios que era en forma de hombre. Listen to this. He was in the form of a man. But his head, where the brain is and the soul is, the spirit of man, right? His spirit was God. Entonces vemos este carnero, o sea, este hombre que tenía la cabeza de carnero. Y la cabeza es que el cerebro, la mente, el cerebro ahí, donde también está ¿qué? El alma, el espíritu. Esa es la parte que es su persona. ¿Quién eres? ¿Y quién era este hombre? Un carnero, el dios carnero. So again, it's like we're seeing the concept, same thing as the bullock, right? Where the bullock was, or the bullock, right, was, apis, was the physical form of God. Here we see that the physical form, then we saw the physical form of God as a ram, and then we see another god in the Egyptian, pantheon, who is a man with the head of a god, with the god ram, which again would tie him into the ram god, which would tie everybody to the sun, right? So aquí estamos viendo la conexión de todos estos dioses, pero los conceptos. And then look at the concepts. The concept is a man that's a god. Let's just look at this for a second in Wikipedia. I'm not using Wikipedia as a I'm not saying that this is a scholarly thing. No. It's just easy they got a picture ready for us to see the picture. They got a few things there which could be or may not be 100% right, but it's good enough for what we're talking about. Nosotros estamos usando Wikipedia, no es una plataforma escolar de eruditos, académicos, pero es suficiente para lo que estamos diciendo ahora. All right, so and nothing stops, all these people that have academics and all that, you guys can go and fix this stuff up. That's fine. I'm sure the Wikipedia would allow you to do that. I don't see why. You got all these people and teachers and all that saying, Wikipedia isn't scholarly. Well, then do some scholarship with it. Why don't you? But they prefer to keep, you see what let me stop right there. That's a rant. I don't want to go into that. Okay, pero lo que conocen, los escolares, los eruditos, vayan y arreglan lo que está ahí. Si hay algo mal, vamos, verifícalo, vaya. Esto está libre para que ustedes vayan y corrigen. All right, so in any case, here we have, it seems like it's pronounced Kenum. Okay, they don't have, like we have in our Blue Letter Bible, the enunciation of it here. Santo Señor. Pero it says that he is one of the earliest known Egyptian deities, originally the god of the source of the Nile, originally. But look at what it says. This is interesting stuff here. Since the annual flooding of the Nile brought with it silt and clay, and its water brought life to its surroundings. Its waters brings life, you see. He was thought to be the creator of the bodies of human children, which he made at a potter's wheel from clay and placed in their mother's wombs. He was later described as having molded the other deities and had the titles Divine Potter and Lord of created things from himself. Boom. Alrighty. Y vamos I'll read this in Spanish. Okay, I'll read this in Spanish. Dado que la inundación anual del Nilo traía consigo limo y arcilla, y su agua traía vida a su entorno, se pensó que él era el creador de los cuerpos de los niños humanos, que hizo en un alfarero de arcilla y colocó en el vientre de sus madres. Más tarde se le describió como quien había moldeado a las otras deidades y tenía los títulos de divino alfarero y señor de las cosas creadas a partir de sí mismo. Alright? Entonces usted está viendo conceptos. Usted está oyendo conceptos. Okay? So you're hearing these concepts and you should be saying to yourself, boy, that sounds a lot like Christianity. Or Judeo-Christianity, more correctly, right? Eso suena mucho como la enseñanza judea cristiano, judeo-cristiano. What's up with that? ¿Qué tiene? ¿Cómo es eso? Así, yo le expliqué antes que no hay, ¿cómo se dice? No es extraño y no debe ser extraño para ningún creyente o estudiador de la Biblia, de la palabra de Dios, que Dios, que las verdades o conceptos reales, verdades, estuviesen en presente, pensados, tratados por los hombres desde un comienzo. These ideas should be of no surprise that they were around before Israel, because simply these ideas, you can see that they were originated simply by what the result of observing nature, observing things, and not having enough knowledge about them, right? So what that interaction is what created these concepts. How interesting that these concepts later on would develop into God's plan. Así que estos conceptos no es misterioso que se desarrollaron en el plan de Dios. Now, before you take me the wrong way, because it would appear that what I'm saying is the plan of God concocted, or was it an evolution of concepts? Usted, antes que me malinterprete o malentienda, yo no estoy diciendo que los conceptos evangélicos son desarrollos de evolución o desarrollos fabricadas por los tiempos y la gente, o sea, la mente religiosa. No, eso no es lo que estoy diciendo. Lo que yo estoy diciendo es que Dios preparó todas las cosas. What I'm saying, that God is the one who has prepared all things, and his teaching, what is holy, Kodesh, sus enseñanzas han sido preparadas, son Kodesh, son santo. Enseñanza. 300 años. See, if you begin to 300 years, I'm throwing these things at you so that you begin to, well, this was there, this was there, that was there, this was there, this was there, so you can understand that when things are there, ready, and then they go with it towards the next level, that means something. It doesn't mean, but it's an accident. No quiere decir, cuando las cosas están ya listas, you can see, listen, if you walk to a field, see, and you see some things, right now I got out here in the back, I have a table. If you come and walk on the property, you'll walk a bit, because you got to walk a bit, and you will bump into or see a table. And on that table, you'll see a lot of pots right now. So you see a lot of pots, and you see some other things, and all of those things will tell you, oh, pastor's planning something here. See, that's what you would say. You wouldn't say these things are appearing, from thin air just by looking and say, well, what is this here? It came from nowhere. You don't say that. You say that somebody's doing something here and planning to do something there, right? Usted cuando venga a mi propiedad aquí, usted va a ver, donde estamos aquí, usted va a ver, y camina un poco, rato, usted ve una mesa, y arriba de mesa hay unas ¿cómo se dice eso? Donde se siembra semillas y cosas, muchas cosas, y que usted va a identificar como preparativos para hacer algo, quizás sembrar, hacer algo en finca, whatever. Usted va a ver herramientas de trabajar en la tierra, de cortar árboles, etcétera, etcétera. So you'll see that. ¿Y qué es lo que tú vas a pensar? ¿Que eso es un accidente? ¿Que solo lo tiré ahí para nada? Usted no va a pensar eso. Usted va a ver y usted va a poder palpar palpablemente y realmente realizar que algo se va a hacer aquí. So you know when you see something that something is being prepared. You see this in Egypt before Israel and throughout the time Israel was there. And you have to come and then on top of that, see, on top of that, which is my main point, what you need to understand and take home with you today, is that on top of what they experienced in Egypt and what was going on in Egypt, then God comes and uses the same symbols. You have to. You must, just like you saw those potting materials and those tools, you figured out, pastor's planning to do some work out there, right? You have to see that all of these things are preparation. It's introduction of concepts that would be hard to understand otherwise. Can you imagine? Usted tiene que entender que estas son preparativos, conceptos introducidos para acomodar el entendimiento después. And hold on to that understanding that you're preparing so that you have understanding later. You gotta hold on to that. It's very important. Usted tiene que entender que la preparación es para que haya entendimiento después. So what is the concept here? A man, now that we've gone through the physicality, because the apis and the ram, el becerro y el carnero egipcio representaban Dios. Dicen es un Dios, right? Pero la idea, el concepto es Dios encarnada, right? Punto. So you see that thing, but then you also now see another, right? And I'm not saying that this is one is before the other or it was in that order. No, it doesn't really matter. No importa en qué orden esté. Si este fue el primer versión del el Dios carnero, no tiene nada que ver, right? So it has nothing. There's no bearing on if the first concept was a man with a ram's head as opposed to the God being a ram. Obviously, the man with the ram's head had to have developed from the ram first, right? The ram had to be the God first. It wasn't the man. Let's look at this while I'm speaking. You have to realize that that it wouldn't be that they created a God that was a man first and then later brought in the concept of a ram, so that then the ram inherits from the man the qualities. I'm sorry, I'll change the camera until that loads in because we're on a very precarious connection. So you understand? Was it the man first? Was the man, the body of a man, the first thing, or that was a God, or was the ram the first thing that was a God? Right? So you have to figure that out. Usted tiene que entender o figurar o preguntar si era el cuerpo del hombre. Vamos a decir que este Dios, Kenum, la primera versión de él era el hombre, right? O sea, ¿cuál fue la primera versión en términos de los dioses, del becerro, el apis, del carnero o el Kenum? What was the first version? What was the first God in Egypt? We know that Kenum was the oldest or one of the oldest gods that Egypt had. Sabemos que Kenum era uno de los dioses más antiguos de los egipcios. Right now there was no information comparing the surgeons of Kenum compared to Apis or to Amun-Ra, and I don't have that information. I didn't look that up. But in any case, even let's just assume that Kenum was one of the oldest, maybe before one of the others. Let's just say that. We know that Kenum was not before the ram, right? Because then if Kenum was before the ram, what does the ram head mean? If the ram wasn't God or already considered a God, you would have had a man of a body. The God would have been the man, right? Not the head. So it had to be that the ram at that time's not loading that up. I'm sorry about that, but the connection won't cooperate. So it cannot be that the first thing, let me cheat here and just blow that up like that. That's a good thing. Okay, so it can't be that that the first version of Kenum was just a man, right? no podía ser que la primera versión de Kenum era un hombre. Tenía, porque ¿qué hay de Dios en el hombre? Ese concepto, no. Lo que hace Kenum un Dios es la cabeza. What makes Kenum a God is the head, because the head is a God. You see, that's the issue. The head is depicting the ram God. La cabeza está demostrando el Dios carnero. So, entonces tiene que ser que antes del hombre tenía el Dios Kenum en forma así de hombre, tenía que existir el Dios carnero. So we have to take it that the ram is indeed first as a deity, and it's what identifies this man Kenum as the deity of the ram. So nosotros tenemos que entender que el carnero, la cabeza de carnero, es lo que hace que Kenum en forma de hombre sea un Dios. All right. So that being said, we can appreciate what is this concept. Este concepto, and how is it related to Christianity? ¿Cómo está relacionado con lo cristiano? And then looking at the Jewish, the Hebrew, Israel, the significance of the ram, el significado de el carnero en lo judío, el significado de este concepto a lo cristiano. You understand? You see, you still see today a resistance amongst Jews, and I never take my words about Jews as being anti-Semitic. It's absolutely not. My best friends are Jews. I have to say it all the time because people thought they want to look for any way to attack the things that I'm teaching. Instead of engaging what I'm teaching, it can be easy. Listen, and between academics, we have an easy way. It's called peer review, and you write it down, or you make a video, and you explain why, my view is off or incorrect, and this is why. The boom, boom, boom. That's it. That's how the intelligent do it. Okay, simply. Those who aren't intelligent, they start saying, they start using labels and this and that. It's just stupid. Don't do that. You show yourself for what you are. Los brutos empiezan a pelear y a decir, tú no sabes lo que estás diciendo, que esto otro, haciendo tanta bobería como si ustedes son la autoridad de lo que es verdad o no. Los inteligentes discutan con escritos y no están hablando de la persona ni humillando a la persona, están hablando de los datos. That's it, los datos, y los presentan, ¿sí? Y demuestran que aquí dijiste esto, tú piensas así. Acá pues vemos que hay razón o de evidencia contundente, o que puede ser que es así por esta razón, esta segunda razón, esta tercera razón. Eso se discuta así, con inteligencia, no así tirando, juzgando los unos a otros. Es ridículo. All right, so I see, and so that's the thing that we have to understand, is that these type of things have to be discussed. I did not create or fabricate the concept of a man that is God. We didn't do that. Christian Church did not do that. Christian Church did not create the concept of a man that is God. We didn't create it. La iglesia cristiana no creó el concepto que un hombre es Dios. ¿Sí? I'm not going to talk about atheists. Atheists have reasons to say what they say. No voy a hablar a los ateos, porque los ateos tienen razón de hablar como hablan. Pero si hay Dios, a los gente que son religiosos, if there is a God for religious folks now, you're a believer. You believe there is a God. You must believe that God is in control of all things. Usted tiene que entender que Dios es todopoderoso, está en control de todas las cosas. ¿Cómo es que tú vas a pensar que Dios no influenció a Egipto? Now that you're looking at it, how can you believe that God did not influence Egypt? ¿Cómo tú puedes pensar que Dios no influenció a Egipto? What a concept. Mira qué concepto. Some would say, well, was the pharaohs wanted to have more power, so they became men. In other words, they began to teach that God was a man. Ellos, los faraones, dirá cualquier estudiado, que los faraones querían más poder y más autoridad, y entonces se hicieron dioses. Y por eso ese concepto era más fácil de traer este concepto para dar al faraón más poder, más autoridad. Right? It's to give the pharaoh more authority and more things. That's fine. But for the believer, for those who believe in God, God being all powerful, this is a concept that God allowed to be. Esto es un concepto que Dios permitió que hubiese. And not only that God brought, because look at what happened to Israel. Fíjate lo que pasó con Israel. Dios lo trajo a Egipto. God brought Israel into Egypt. And what I'm not saying that he brought them so that I'm going to tell you what happens when you bring somebody into this culture. ¿Qué es lo que va a pasar cuando tú traes a un pueblo, a unas personas en una cultura así? 300 años más. ¿Qué va a suceder? What is going to happen? Eventualmente. ¿Qué conocimiento? Yo no voy a decir que los israelitas se hicieron creyentes en esto. No. I'm not saying that Israel became believers in this, but they were exposed to it. They had knowledge of it. Estaban expuestos a esto y tenían conocimiento de esto. ¿Cierto? You understand that? Entonces Dios lo permite. Dios trae a Israel a estar expuesto a esto. So God permits this, and then he brings Israel. He brings Israel to be exposed to this. What do you think? Why do you think God brought them there? Why do you think, if God was going, did God know beforehand that he would bring Israel to Egypt? Dios conocía, una pregunta, Dios conocía que iba a traer Israel a Egipto. Yes. Seguro que sí. So all I'm saying is that God brought the Israel and Egypt with its concepts together. And then later, because this is the clincher, this is where the argument is done. Okay? Then God brings in the symbols that they know and brings it into the instructions. Así que entonces, Dios permite estos conceptos, trae Israel a Egipto, y entonces, después que lo saca de Egipto, 300 años, usa estos símbolos otra vez. Y eso sella, amigo. Eso es contundente. So that is a confirmation, okay, of pre-planning. Esto era pre-planeado. Eso lo confirma. Sencillamente, porque si Dios no quería que Israel que no quería que sean expuestos a estos conceptos, porque eso es una contaminación. Y como hoy día cualquier judío dirá, eso es una contaminación, ¿cómo tú puedes decir eso? Eso da reacción, ¿entiendes? You have to understand that any Jew hearing this right now would say, well, this is that's a contamination. You're suggesting that God contaminate the minds of Israel with this impure thoughts and concepts that are totally non-Jewish or not Hebrew, not Israel, right? These are not God's concepts. Again, those are statements that are assumptions. Esos son cuando dice el judío o cualquiera dice que esto no son enseñanzas de Dios, estos son enseñanzas espurias. Eso Dios como en forma de hombre. ¿Cómo es que tú vas a decir que Dios quería que Israel sea expuesto a eso? Because he did it. That's why. Simple. Esto es sencillo porque él lo hizo. Because if God did not want, knowing that Israel was going to be in Egypt for 300 years, he didn't have to permit that. Does he not have the power to not permit the concept depicted here from being in Egypt? And the answer to that, for anyone who knows God's qualities and abilities and power, he could have. La respuesta a la pregunta de si Dios podía haber eliminado este concepto y los demás de Egipto, la respuesta, sabiendo que Israel iba a venir allí estos 300 años, y la respuesta es que seguro que sí. Yes, of course. And the other gods in Egypt are of no matter here. Los otros dioses de Egipto no son importantes aquí. O sea, it's part of the facade. Es parte del ambiente. Right? Es parte de, o sea, que no tenga esto en cuenta mucho. No se alarmen, pero todavía son conceptos introducidas. So the fact that Egypt had these many gods, frogs and all these other snakes and all these other things, it's a detractor to these concepts that we're talking about. So what about that? How do we consider that? Well, it's not relevant in terms of these other gods and those gods. There's no distinction other than ranking, really. And anyone would just normally, we're not in Egypt for 300 years, but anyone else would look at this and say, God allowed all of these gods to be there. Right, yes, and that's right. That is true. Right? Because again, Egypt didn't have the truth, right? The truth would come through the Israel, right? Egipto no tenía la verdad. El egipcio no entendía las cosas, pero no tienen que ver, no tienen que ver eso con el hecho que conceptos son conceptos, pueden ser equivocadas o correctas, o tener alguna familiaridad con algo que es verdadero. So, the whole point here, though, is that Egypt could have thousands and did have hundreds of gods, and the fact that they have concepts that all concepts by themselves. I'm not talking about the God themselves. We're not here suggesting that these gods were true. No estamos hablando que estos dioses eran verdaderos. Estoy hablando de los conceptos. And not all the concepts were true, right? God wasn't using Egypt. God did not call Egypt to be a holy nation. Dios no llamó a Egipto para ser una nación santa. And you understand what holy means, right? ¿Sí? Pero no quiere decir que algunos conceptos eran muy cercas o exactas a enseñanzas verdaderos que Dios después ya lo introdujo a Israel. Están aquí, ya está. Right? Pero estaban allí. So it doesn't mean that just because God gave, and I'm a little distracted, I have to confess, I'm going to do that now, so y'all can pray for me, right? Because I'm feeling, I'm off right now because I'm fighting an infection of a accident that I had last week, and so that's kind of like, it's creating a little bit of fog for me. So you can see that I'm a little off these days. We also came out of COVID, right? So I'm a month ago, but there's like things going on with me, right? So please forgive me my cloudiness and anything. I'm a human being. I'm already gray hair, so things are going on. So give me that my space on that, and forgive me for the color, because I'm feeling that I'm here hot now, I'm sweaty, and I'm just not feeling my 100%. I'm trying to get back to where I was before, and I've been saying this for some time, ever since that accident, the big accident that we had years ago, right? And so I've been battling with this, and now even battling even more. But allow me that some graciousness there on your part, that you demonstrate grace on your part and be forgiving, because I know I'm not 100% on my game, so that I do recognize. All right, but anyway, estoy pidiendo disculpas a los oyentes que estoy sintiendo un poco mal. Tuve un accidente recién aquí y estoy luchando para que no se infecte. Ya ustedes saben que tengo problemas con la infección, así que me tiene eso como un poco, el pensar de la lucha que tengo, que puede venir, o que la lucha en sí interno en mi cuerpo puede estar causando distracción, esa inquietud. Y los otros tiempos estaba distraído con mensajes que llegaban a la pantalla, y entonces eso ya lo apagué, esas notificaciones. Pero todo en conjunto está como afectando mi claridad que típicamente tengo cuando estoy dando estas enseñanzas. Me disculpan, ora por mí. necesito la oración, pero es ser humano. Nosotros somos humanos, no somos dioses en forma de hombre. All right, so let's get back to it. And again, forgive me for that little I had to share with you, I guess, and somebody can pray for me out there, and that'll be well received, really. All right. So let me check the time. Also, there's so much out of whack. We've only recently moved into this place, okay, and it's just one of the places. For me, in terms of my work and what I'm doing, it's just one of the places that I'm looking to be at, and I'm probably, if I'm given life, you'll probably see different places happening, but. Everything's still not unpacked, and we have a hurricane coming to Florida, probably, and we're still unpacked. So, we're not even ready for a hurricane. You can forget about being ready for a hurricane. So all of these things, there's a lot of little things. Then we're trying to make preparations. So it's a lot of little things, and the recent accident. So all of that is taking its weight also on whatever's going on. So I appreciate that you do give me a little prayer, that even if you're my enemy, you hated everything I say, pray for me, pray God. All right. And God, if God wants to take me, he can take me. I have no problem. It's not that I need to stay alive or anything. I'm sure everybody wants me to be alive. Yeah, right. It doesn't, I'm not. I would rather be with God. That's frankly and totally true. Yo prefiero estar con Dios. Y eso lo estoy diciendo con toda la sinceridad. So no es que yo estoy teniendo una finalidad, una terminación cercana, o lo que sea. Si yo no estoy tratando de estar hasta los 100 años de edad, I'm not trying to be 100 years old here. I've seen it. All right. So I'm not trying. I don't have that desire. But it's just the process. And so es un proceso que estamos involucrados. So again, just forgive me because I'm feeling that little. Like behind the eyes. I don't know if anyone's had that. Like behind the eyes, you have like clouds. Así que estoy sintiendo que detrás de mis ojos están las nubes. Alrighty. Okay. So, it is what it is. Now, so this is something that, adds weight to what God does later in the bringing out of these symbols, and then what God then talking about Israel, but then later on when Jesus is here, obviously long forgotten, it has nothing to do with anything except for us today. When we look back, then we can see the things prepared, because that's what I was talking about before, the things prepared before Israel got there, and then the things said by God once Israel was taken out. And then we start seeing relationships. Now, we look back. At the time, whatever they had in their head at the time was, they had in their head. Whatever prejudice they had in their head is also, something that needs to be considered. Cualquier prejuicio que tuviesen Israel a estas cosas, o no a estas cosas, sino a considerarlos como asociados con lo de Egipto. Tiene que ser considerada cuál fue su prejuicio y si lo conectaban o no tiene que ver con la realidad de lo que es. So basically what I'm saying is that even if Israel, then and now, doesn't matter, rejected a tie-in to the symbols of Egypt or to the meanings, right, of Egypt, it does not take away from the reality that the concepts were true, right? It doesn't tell us, it doesn't give us any reason to not see what was truth, even though Israel didn't see it, which is the whole issue that, outside of this problem, the reason this is a complex problem that I'm beginning to unravel for you all concerning Israel and the way they took things. We already understand, and I'm glad that this happened this way, because now we gotta go here. We gotta teach about this. The way that Israel took things is at the crux of the Bible, isn't it? El problema aquí es esta. Oh my goodness. En la manera que Israel tomó las cosas está al corazón de toda la Biblia. Todo el problema de la Biblia está. See that? I even got that. It's crazy stuff. I got everything. Oh my goodness. But there's a lot of people worse than I, obviously. Forgive me. So, es el problema de todo lo que está en la Biblia. La manera que tomaron las cosas. So, it doesn't matter that they did not accept or did not remember or had no association, no mental connection to Canum here. What was it called? So no importa que no tuviesen conexión mental Israel a este Dios Canum, no importa, ¿sí? Porque el problema de Israel y de los judíos después, ¿verdad? En los tiempos de Cristo, es que no entendían, no veían las relaciones y no veían el significado de las cosas. So ¿cómo vamos a esperar? How is it that we can expect Israel to understand the concept of this man God when they didn't even understand the concept, about the Ten Commandments and Torah? Right? As we see that later God said so. God said they don't understand. Who's going to teach them? And so, así Dios mismo dice que no entienden. ¿Quién le va a instruir? ¿Quién le va a enseñar sabiduría? Right? Hablando específicamente de Efraín. Pero que todo Israel fue llevado a cautiverio. Todo Israel pecó contra Dios. Y entonces Judá también. So we see that even though God was saying things about Ephraim in particular, they didn't understand. Who's going to teach them wisdom? Who's going to teach them, the meanings of these things? But we see that all of Israel, all the 10 tribes of Israel would later be taken away into captivity. And then and I said later, I actually, whenever they would be taken away, and then you have Judah, right? Also would be taken away into captivity. Everybody messed up. Todo el mundo en Israel se dañó. So cuando Cristo vino, no lo reconocieron, no le recibieron. Then when Christ comes in the Christian perspective, for the Jewish Mashiach hasn't come, but in the Christian perspective, Mashiach was Jesus, and he did come, and they did not receive him. no lo recibieron. A los suyos vino y no lo recibieron. ¿Está bien? Porque no conectaron los puntos. Because they did not connect the dots. And truthfully, if we have to speak truthfully, the way that Israel saw things is not the way things came to be, right? They wouldn't, so that's what you have, that disparity. Well, how could Jesus, because he didn't do this, he wasn't qualified this way and that way, and blah, blah, blah. Because again, the way, and I've done this before, I've shown people, it's the way you are looking at what is being said. That's the difference. It's not what was said, it's the way you're looking at it. La manera que usted está, yo he hablado con muchos judíos, con mucha gente que estudian Torah, y yo he enseñado que usted no vieron y no reconocieron a Cristo como el Mesías por la manera que ven las cosas, o otro vez de decir, como no ven las cosas, no entienden lo que dice Torah. Okay, usted tiene un entendimiento, un nivel de entendimiento, pero aún los rabinos, the rabbis had shut down any mystical or mysticism which used to be done. The Hebrews would go beyond and look for meanings in the Torah, but the rabbis nixed all that because obviously there was no control, there were no boundaries, and things started going wacky, right? And there was a reason for that. Christians know the reason for that. Why would they go really out there if they're studying God's word, right? And I'll tell you what it is. And you put that in your notebook. Because they did not have the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh. The Christians have it. The Christians receive the Ruach HaKodesh, and as Jesus said, he shall guide you. He shall remind you of all the things I have taught. So I will send you another comforter, another one to minister to you. Yo te enviaré otro consolador. Otro que va a ministrar, el Ruach HaKodesh. Okay? So the Christians, all the Christians there are more or less guided by the Holy Spirit. Están dirigidos por el Espíritu Santo. Okay? Más o menos, dependiendo la gente, las denominaciones, seguramente, etcétera, etcétera. So, people are guided by the Holy Spirit, Christians, to a one degree or to another, depending on the person, depending on their maturity, on their understanding, how much they let go and let God, etc., etc. And then we have, so there are those who do adhere, who do have authentic guidance by the Holy Spirit. They will have their boundaries. They ain't going to go all the way out. There's definitely more beyond where the Hebrews are at, right? We the Christians are over. I'm not depicting higher and better. I'm just saying difference, right? In terms of, let's do it this way so no one gets offended, triggered. Okay, so let's say the Jews say we have to stay here and pay close attention to the what God has said in our traditions, what our rabbis and scholars have said over the age, our sages. That's the word I was looking for. Los judíos piensan que deben de mantenerse en la enseñanza de los eruditos por los siglos y no salirse de allí a inventar, a descubrir el misticismo, todo eso. Okay. Then el cristiano que tiene el Espíritu Santo, las iglesias o los conceptos que han venido a través del Espíritu Santo, right? So nosotros somos judeos, entonces cristianos, trying to get the hands right? So entonces venimos acá, And we're here. No donde los hebreos no van a buscar allí. Okay, porque le enseñan mantenerse acá. Porque cuando usted va para acá, usted entiende el Torah, right? Pero usted está viviendo del entendimiento o en la entendimiento y bíblicamente en la vida de Torah, no en las obediencia a Torah, porque la obediencia a Torah, que es aquí, en la obediencia de Torah, right, está supuesto a producir esto, donde los cristianos se encuentran. The practice of Torah is supposed to bring about the understanding in which Christians live today. And the proof of that is Jeremiah 31 through 34, read it. We've done that a lot here, we showed that. Nosotros hemos enseñado mucho sobre Jeremías 31 a 34. All right. So, entonces, ¿por qué? La pregunta es, ¿por qué el hebreo, el judío, no ve esto? Primeramente lo limitan. So they are limited to here. Why don't they see this? Because they're limited to here. And when you're limited to there, you can't go here. So they nix it. You can't go there. Right? You have to only stay here. Jesus came, and this was his teachings. Jesús vino y estos eran su enseñanza. Right? Oh, it was like this actually. Right? Lo de aquí para allá. ¿Qué tú estás haciendo? Tú no estás supuesto a guardar el sábado. Y tus discípulos, ¿por qué están por allá? ¿Sí? Porque los discípulos y Jesús estaban así. Y ellos estaban así. Again, so this all began by us stating that just because Israel doesn't see it that way doesn't mean it isn't. And for anyone, even the Hebrew this and that, to stand there and arrogantly say, well, the Hebrew way is the right way, para que el hebreo entonces viene a decir que lo hebreo es lo correcto. Que Dios dice, Dios habla claramente que no hicieron. ¿Y qué manera hicieron ellos? Cuando Dios lo llevó a la cautividad, a Babilonia, y lo dispersó, los 10 tribus en todo el mundo. ¿Y qué vista de hebreo es que tenemos que estar mirando? ¿En qué punto quieren decir que el hebreo está correcto? Sí, ese es el problema. So the problem is, on what basis are you saying that the Hebrew is correct, that the Hebrew perspective is the right one, when God threw you guys all over the planet for being wrong, not for being right? You know, es increíble. So it's incredible that anyone can have that opinion. Now I understand, I know, the world will come and seek a Jew. I know that. I know those verses, okay? But that's at a certain time when the Jews realize what the teaching is, what the truth is of everything. And you watch that it's what I'm saying. Watch. Usted vélalo, que cuando ese tiempo llega, es lo que dijo Dr. Gilberto Rosado. That's it, baby. Watch it. I don't expect none of y'all to recognize it now. None. Yo no espero que ninguno lo reconozca ahora, because it's too early. I know that. Es muy temprano. Especialmente para la mentalidad hebreo, especially for the Hebrew mentality. It's too early. But just like in Egypt, things are getting prepared. Así como en Egipto, las cosas se están preparando. All right. So this is going to be what the truth is accepted by the Jews and Hebrews, this and that, when the time comes. All right, let's continue here. I'm looking just to see anything else of importance here. All right, so that's it on that. So we see that Egypt had already a concept of God in a human form. So vemos que Egipto ya tenía un concepto de Dios en forma humana. Y no solamente eso, and not only that, but the idea of the head being the God. You see, the body, you got to look at it simply. The body was a man's body. So when you saw the body, you see a man. Yet, the head is what? Where the man speaks, what he says, and then how he sees, what he sees, the perspective of what he's seeing, right? So he's not seeing with human eyes. No está mirando con ojos humanos. Está mirando con los ojos de Dios, los ojos del carnero. Then he has the head is also where he's breathing, and that is the breath of life. Es la respiración del carnero, que es Dios. La vida es de Dios. O sea que la vida de este cuerpo de hombre es de Dios. Dios es que lo tiene en vivo porque es Dios. And God has him alive because he is God. His life is in God. See that? And then the thinking, the brain, el pensamiento, los pensamientos, las calculaciones, el análisis, el juicio, is de Dios. It's of God. His judgment is of God. His teaching are not my own. They come from the Father. You got it? They come from God. Mis enseñanzas no son los míos, vienen de Dios. Son de Dios. Son de nuestro Padre. Porque el cuerpo no es un Dios. Because the body is not a God. Yet it is a God. El cuerpo no es un Dios, pero es Dios. See, this is serious. This is a serious concept so early in the life of Israel, right? Esto es un concepto inmensamente grande en la mente de Israel. This is a tremendous concept at this time. Esto es un concepto tremendo. But see everything that's in it. Pero vea todo lo que está adentro de esto. Realize what it is. Of course, you can't see what I'm talking about, right? Hay que realizar lo que es. So, this is a tremendous. This type of teaching here, by the way, it's very apropos for those who ask the question: How can you think that Jesus was God? Now, I still haven't taught, and we're going to finish with this here today. I still haven't taught. Todavía no he enseñado sobre el número uno razón que Jesús tiene que ser Dios. I have not taught on that yet. I'm saving that. So if I die before I teach it, I'm sorry. I just don't feel I'm going to die yet. I'll promise you one thing. If I'm in my deathbed, I will have my whoever's around me, my wife or whoever it is, my children, set up the camera, and I will teach that last sermon. That will be it. Okay? But those who ask, aquellos que preguntan, yo estoy prometiendo que antes de morirme, si Dios me da el chance, yo voy a traer esa enseñanza. El número una razón que Jesús tiene que ser Dios. Eso nadie lo está enseñando. No one. No one's teaching that, by the way. No one has revealed that. But I do have, and the answer is in Torah, by the way. That is found in Torah. Se encuentra en Torah, and no one has found it. Y nadie lo ha encontrado. Yo lo encontré, gracias a Dios. Not that makes me special. No me hace a mí especial. Pero Dios me lo enseñó en Torah. So God showed me in Torah why Jesus had to be God. Right? So that is evidence that I will bring on my deathbed. Esa es evidencia que yo voy a traer en mi cama, en mi lecho de muerte. But you can see already God being all powerful, Dios siendo todopoderoso, that God is already prepared for Israel certain concepts. Later on, these concepts are reinforced or reintroduced, whichever way you want to say. I don't think it needed reinforcing, but reintroduced or reconfirmed in the rituals that God gave to Israel. And next week, when we get together, I didn't do it. I was going to do it here, but we didn't get to it. But next week, we're going to go into the bread without yeast, unleavened bread. And we're going to get into that one. Nosotros vamos a entrar entonces ahora a los panes sin levadura, que es la próxima instrucción de Dios en esto. Y eso es otra cosa. So vamos a estudiar sobre eso la semana que viene. So we're going to get into that next week. I'm sure I forgot what I was going to tell you. I said it must have been a great idea. But I'll review the video and see. If I have to add it to it, I will. I'll inject it there before uploading. God bless everyone, and Dios le bendiga a todos, y hasta la próxima clase. Dios le bendiga.